New York progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has endorsed President Joe Biden's 2024 re-election bid. Let's watch.
So president's only primary opponents are Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Haven't been any rumors about anyone else even thinking about jumping in. Will you be supporting Joe Biden for re-election?
I believe given that field, yes. I think he's done quite well, given the limitations that we have. I do think that there are ebbs and flows, as there are in any presidency. You know, there are areas that I think were quite strong when he came right out of the gate with the American Rescue Plan. And of course, the Inflation Reduction Act was a massive step in terms of our climate agenda. But, you know, there are also areas that I think could have gone better. We have major structural issues in this country. And I think it starts with the United States Senate. And I think that until we have senators that are willing to stand up and stare the filibuster in the eye and stare a lot of structural issues about the Senate, and the United States Senate will be what holds back this country from an enormous amount of progress.
AOC also joined former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on her show yesterday, talking about her political future. Let's take a look.
But in 5 years, are you going to be in Congress?
I mean, maybe. You know, I think I've always tried to approach my service in a way of what really I think would be best for people. And if it would be best for me to continue my service, then I will. If it's best for me to continue my service in a different form, then I hope to do that as well.
Like in the Senate, for example.
So if you put those two clips together, she certainly does actually sound like she's suggesting that the Senate's the problem. Maybe I should be in the Senate.
It does sound like that. For many progressives, this was a very disappointing moment for her. We are, 18 months out from the actual election. There's plenty of time and opportunity for her to delay her endorsement, even if you think ultimately she's going to endorse the incumbent. Bernie Sanders endorsed Joe Biden, I believe, the day that he officially announced that he was running. And now here comes AOC, who says specifically, given the field of candidates that exists, I will endorse Joe Biden. Many people look to that and say, well, you were a candidate that got into office as a DSA-aligned candidate whose central issue was Medicare for All, which Joe Biden virulently opposes and says he would veto even if she were able to reform the Senate in these magical ways and get them to pass it. She is someone who claimed to be a supporter of the $15 minimum wage, which Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer very specifically killed. It was a part of the first COVID relief bill at the beginning of Joe Biden's administration. And it was part of that package as a must-pass bill. It's a very popular policy, as I say all the time. Even Florida voters in 2020 supported it, but Chuck Schumer took it out so that would never have to be a question of whether Republicans were going to vote down on the whole COVID relief package, which allowed America to open back up again and get vaccines distributed and get their businesses going again, because it was taken out not because of any pressure to do so, but because Chuck Schumer, presumably with the approval of Joe Biden, just chose to do so, and there was very little objection apart from Bernie Sanders about that. She did speak out somewhat against Biden's choice to bifurcate the social spending aspects of Build Back Better from the infrastructure aspects of Build Back Better in a way that was obviously designed to kill the social spending and, again, prevent it from being a must-pass bill. And instead of talking about all of that and saying that my support is contingent on him doing more, maybe on the student debt front, for instance, maybe even mentioning the existence of something called medical debt in America, which does not exist in any similarly affluent country because other people don't go into bankruptcy because they have healthcare bills. Instead of taking this opportunity to speak to all of these legitimate failures from the Biden administration and speak to the audience that got her elected, she seems to be, in the context of these interviews, concerned about the small incremental role that she can play in her own personal career as a senator, and that's disappointing to the left.
Same thing with Ukraine. I mean, remember the very tepid attempt that was, I think, was almost a year ago now, it was probably a full year ago, that some progressive members of the House made that letter that they put together asking a very mild criticism of the administration's efforts here. That, again, that was a full year ago. This is still going on with just as much ferocity. Biden is going to send cluster bombs to Ukrainian forces with all, we talked about earlier in the show, with all the downside of that. Again, that's not on AOC. She can have whatever view of it she wants, and she and I don't have the same views on a whole lot of policies, but I object to a lot of our Ukrainian strategy and the lack of urging of diplomacy and the lack of realism that this needs to be brought to an end. I would think, based on, as you said, she was a DSA-aligned candidate. I know this is something where my views and people on the left can find some common cause. We've found some common cause on this. So it is frustrating, not to pile on, but it's frustrating that she is doing absolutely nothing whatsoever on the front to raise the salience of that.
Yep. And as a counterexample of how she and her caucus could be behaving, you see what the Freedom Caucus is doing right now and how much power they've managed to extract from a narrow majority. The exact same narrow majority that progressives had at the beginning of Joe Biden's administration. Progressives at the time wanted them to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi being Speaker of the House in exchange for various concessions. They did not. The Freedom Caucus did, and they got some very meaningful ones. They basically control what bills can come to the House floor right now because of appointments that they got on various committees from Congressman McCarthy. There was real power at stake, and so much of the Democratic Party's game, because I think a lot of Democratic Party voters are really well-meaning and they want a lot of good things, and there's this broader bipartisan populist core of America that agrees on common sense gun control and healthcare reform and a $15 minimum wage and all of this kind of stuff. But they believe, Democrats uniquely are credulous about their party's ability to do X, Y, and Z. And this fiction about, well, it's not our fault, it's just that the Senate won't go along with it. We know that's a fiction because we saw exactly how Barack Obama behaved with a supermajority. We heard the promises about how, well, if you just elect a Democrat one more time, we're gonna codify Roe, we're gonna pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Obama did not do those things, despite having a supermajority. And now they've turned around, and it very much looks like they're set to do the exact same thing with student debt reform. Because now Biden's plan B, trying again through the Higher Education Act, because there's a notice and comment period, it would take us into his second term. And you can already see them lining up on TV, Ro Khanna and others giving interviews saying, well, you got to vote for Joe Biden if you ever want student debt reform. And so it feels like this carrot, stick, bait, and switch dance that is enabled by people who have progressive bona fides like AOC does, telling the public that this is the most that they can expect.
It speaks to how much this phenomenon of the Democratic Party becoming the home for conformists, frankly, from people who listen and trust authority, follow orders, respect rules, respect process, who are not combative or feisty temperamentally. That's what a Democratic representative is, and that's what the constituency or the highly educated viewers, readers, et cetera, of mainstream news, where on the Republican side, it's the Real Housewives sometimes. It's nasty. It's reality TV. Their standard bearer is a star of reality TV, but there's actual... But I'm saying people make fun of that, but there's actual political argument going on.
So for sure, that exists on the Republican side, but the overwhelming majority of Republican voters, Trump lost because people were over his antics. Trump lost because he couldn't keep it together for an election season, and he was saying all this wild stuff in the context of the COVID pandemic. Well,
maybe there's more conformists than nonconformists.
I agree that there is certainly more of an appetite among the Freedom Caucus for this kind of adversarial politics than among the so-called squad. But I don't know that, I think that generally speaking, elites, middle class, upper middle class people are all looking for stability and bipartisanship and all of these buzzwords. It's really just working class people and poor people of both parties who are driving the populist movement for looking for more straightforward candidates who are telling them the truth. And AOC ran for Congress saying she was going to bring the ruckus. She ran for Congress saying, quote, in any other country, Joe Biden and I would not be in the same party. Well, if you feel so strongly that you should not be in the same party as Joe Biden, why on earth, a year and a half before an election, are you choosing to weigh in with an endorsement instead of saying, well, we deserve to have more candidates if you don't like the candidates that have already thrown their hat in the ring? Why have the Progressive Caucus not been putting their heads together in anticipation of 2024 to run someone who can be the standard bearer for the issues that they said they cared so much about when they got our money and our votes from the progressive flank, people giving their last $27, poor and working class people to support these kinds of campaigns?
Yeah, I'm saying temperamentally the Democratic Party is shifting into something that doesn't just doesn't practice that kind of shtick. That kind of bring the ruckus. They don't bring the ruckus.
It's just a brand. It was a branding exercise.
Yeah.
And you see this a lot now. I mean, AOC, ironically, she was a critic of the weaponization of identity politics that was happening at the time. She said it's not enough for you just to vote for people who are black or Latino or female or whatever, that you have to look at their substantive politics. Where is that discussion now? Richie Torres, who holds himself out as the progressive because he's black, Latino, and gay in New York City, is out here basically tweeting out AIPAC talking points about the murders, all of that was going on in Jenin in Israel and Palestine right now. Where is the pushback from the squad about the rhetoric that he's putting out about that? When's the last time they were forcefully having a discussion about freeing Julian Assange?
Yeah,
AOC
again, that's for
on that a long time
Republicans,
ago.
And then people who are not Republicans but are outside the Democratic coalition, like RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson type people.
And Cornel West is running for office.
Green Party, and it's all the outsiders.
For Cornel West?
It's not. Yeah.
In that moment, on one of the most popular podcasts in America, this liberal touchstone, for her not to use that opportunity to inform the public that there are even these other candidates in the race. Say you're not ideologically aligned with RFK Jr. Marianne Williamson is literally running on the Bernie platform. And you could say something like, I don't know if I'm confident in her ability to succeed, but I'm so glad that she's in the race, keeping these issues alive. She could say, I'm so glad that someone as respected and renowned as Cornel West is in this race, and I strongly support third parties and Green Party candidates.
Absolutely did not say either of those things.
And she could also say, if you're concerned about spoiler effects and Green Party candidates, then it is incumbent on Democrats to stop trying to protect their power by actively attacking every ranked choice voting effort, every effort to get us past the post voting that springs up, that passes by ballot initiative. But the reason that both the Democratic Party,
nothing would be better for our country than getting that done.
Both Democrats and Republicans oppose ranked choice voting.
Of course they do.
Because it preserves their power and enables them to say every single election cycle, you have to vote for us, even though we're substantively ignoring your interests, because otherwise the other guy is going to win.
It's a binary choice between us or the people you hate. And say, well, give us more choices. Change the system so that there are better choices. Well, of course they're not going to do that.
They're never going to do that. So I said in the last 5 to 10 minutes what I think could be very useful for AOC to say using her platform. I am not invited on shows like Pod Save America, and I would like to see someone like AOC and the rest of the squad using their enormously important platform to advance the interests of the left and not advance the interests of the Democratic Party. But hey, I'm not the one in Congress.
Or just their interests of themselves. More Rising after this.